Welcome to the finale of my first ever Shiny Nuzlocke. Over the last few months, I have battled through many gyms, Pokemon Titans, and Team Star bases, all while collecting shiny Pokemon that have helped me out immensely. Later on in this video, you'll see why this was the toughest challenge I'll ever attempt involving shiny Pokemon. As always, I highly recommend checking out all 4 previous videos of this series before watching this finale. We have 1 gym, 1 Titan, and 2 Team Star bases left before taking on the Pokemon League, but before any of that, I feel like I should update you all on the current life status of our shiny teammates. Here's a graphic I made of all the Pokemon we've captured so far, as well as the lives they have remaining. I apologize for not thinking of adding something like this at the beginning of each video following the first part, but better late than never. As of today, I've spent time training most of my caught Pokemon to be around the same level, so I feel prepared heading towards the final gym. Oh, just kidding, we have an outbreak. I ended the last video stating we were heading to battle Grusha, the final gym leader and our path to the Pokemon League. As I packed up and headed towards the gym, I noticed I had an outbreak. It was on a beach, and honestly, the last thing I needed was another water type. What is it? Wait, a Slowbro! Wait, that'll be easy to see. Slowbro is a dual water and psychic type who is extremely strong in the right situation. When I ended the last video, I was ahead by 1 with how many shinies I needed to progress, but decided to go for this Slowbro anyways. Compared to some of my earlier outbreaks, this one took a bit of time. Around 3 to 4 hours had passed between knocking out the Slowbro as well as resetting for their spawns. But after all this time, the Slowbro appeared. Yes. Hold on, I had to pause it. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yay, dude. We found Bubbles the Slowbro. Bubbles is a relaxed nature, which luckily doesn't affect its special attack. Since this outbreak took so much time, I ended here for the day and saved the gym for tomorrow. Though, as we started the next day, I had 2 more outbreaks, both near some water. Again, I thought I wouldn't need any more water types, but still wanted to go check what we hadn't encountered yet. The 2 outbreaks had Dondozo and Vaporeon. Although they had fantastic shiny versions, I didn't want to spend any more time hunting with an outbreak. I instead headed straight towards the Ice-type gym. As always, I had to complete the gym test before battling. I was tested to make it down the snowy slope in a windowed time limit and finished it with ease. Despite how easy this gym test was, I made sure to keep my guard up as we headed into the final gym battle of the series. Grusha prioritized a lot of Ice-type Pokemon and some that are dual-typed as well. I decided to prioritize using Shelly, Medley, and Taco, who together had a combination of Rock and Steel. Shelly came out first to go up against Grusha's Frostmoth. Lucky for me, this Frostmoth was an Ice and Bug type. One Rock Tomb did 4 times the damage as normal and knocked out the Moth quickly. We immediately jumped to a much more difficult Pokemon, Beartic. We swapped out to Taco, who was hit with an Earthquake. I really wasn't expecting a ground move, but luckily, Taco toughed it out. I set out my Stealth Rock and swapped to Medley. We powered up Medley with Hone Claws and took out Beartic with a few Steel Wings. Next up was Titan. Despite its size, it lost a nice chunk of damage due to the Stealth Rock and was then knocked out before dealing a little more damage to Medley. Grusha's final Pokemon was a dual normal and flying type, Altaria. I figured Grusha would terrestrialize Altaria into an Ice type, so I swapped out to Shelly. Shelly was hit with a Dragon Pulse before tossing a few Rock Tombs at the Altaria. This ended up taking out Grusha's final Pokemon. I couldn't believe how easy this final gym was. I have a pretty high appreciation for Ice types, but they all felt very weak. We collected our final badge and made our way to the Fairy type Team Star base. I arrived in the most northern part of Paldea. We found a man named Harrington that was standing outside the Team Star base who challenged us to a battle before we got in. I used Yordi the Sawsbuck to stomp through his Pokemon before entering the Team Star base. Per usual, the challenge of knocking out 30 Pokemon was super easy. We led with Yordi, Taco, and Medley to take everyone down before the leader Ortega came out to challenge us. Ortega had 4 Pokemon total to use, which was a lot compared to other Team Star bases we've done. Yordi took out both Azumarill and Wigglytuff before we swapped out to Taco, who dealt with the Dash Bun and Ortega's final Pokemon, the Starmobile. Taco was able to tough out through both enemies with a few potions while we got off a handful of Future Sights against the Starmobile. We defeated the Fairy type Team Starbase with only Taco getting near another life lost. I don't want to go into these final story beats being overconfident, but I'm glad these final hurdles aren't giving me any troubles as of now. We need to save as many lives as possible for the Pokemon League, so I won't complain. The following day, I had another outbreak close to where we saved at the Team Star base. I arrived and was surprised to see I had a Frostlass outbreak. Frostlass is a dual Ice and Ghost type, and while we just went through a gym of Ice types that felt rather weak, I did want to get redemption on my older Ghost type outbreaks from earlier uploads. It didn't take long as this shiny Frostlass appeared in less than an hour after starting to reset. We named her Canal and added her to the squad to get some training in. With adding Canal to the team, she marks our 17th shiny. This means I only need one more shiny before heading to the Pokemon League. It's been quite a journey hunting and finding so many shinies in our time in Paldea, so I'm really excited to see who we'll get for the 18th shiny. Canal and I would like to remind you all to subscribe and like the video if you've stuck with me this far into the video and our shiny Nuzlocke in general. I truly appreciate the feedback and support from everyone during this series, so let's continue forward as we prepare to take on the final Titan. I rode Miraidon back towards the lake to find the Dragon-type Titan. I arrived to a small island in the center of the lake to find numerous Tatsugiri flopping on land. One Tatsugiri spoke to me moments before getting inhaled by Lord Jabu Jabu himself. While I had planned to fight a Tatsugiri, our newest friend Canal led the fight being an ice type. As soon as I learned we'd be fighting the giant water whale, I quickly swapped back to Yordi. Yordi used Horn Leech a few times on the whale before it faded back into the lake and headed towards the Herba Mystica. We followed closely behind. As Dondozo was eating the spicy herba, Arven arrived to help out. With Arven's Greedent and Yordi, we again got rid of the Dondozo even after it was powered up. Next up was the real Titan. The tiny Tatsugiri that was speaking to us earlier revealed itself to be the true Titan and actually gave me a bit of a speed bump. Despite its small size, this dragonfish lowered Yordi's speed and attack and made it impossible for one of my strongest Pokemon to get rid of it. I swapped out to Bubbles, who again was too slow to take it out. Luckily for me, I had a leech seed placed by Yordi that slowly sucked away at the sushi fish. This gave us an opening after some time to land the final blow on the Dragon-type Titan. Great job on your first big victory, Bubbles. We headed into the cave and found the final Herba Mystica. Arven worked very hard to find all 5 and was luckily able to save his doggo companion. Miraidon and I watched while appreciating the good health Mabosstiff was in. In even more good news, we finally got the ability to climb on Miraidon. This ability will help as I headed to the northeastern part of Paldea to take on the final Team Starbase. I have now completed 17 events in the game, and before I complete the final one, I needed one more shiny Pokemon. I looked at the entire roster of what I caught so far to see what we were missing in terms of typing: Fairy, Fighting, Electric, and Poison. While I was missing Pokemon that stemmed directly from these, I did have Pokemon such as Tamago that was a Flying and Dragon type, but knew the move Moonblast, which would be effective in certain scenarios. I had a target in mind of what would be the 18th shiny and headed in its direction. The last shiny hunt was going to be inside the large bamboo forest of Paldea. There are a variety of great Pokemon we could use such as Luxray, Dratini, Bisharp, and more. Not only are there great Pokemon here, but it is also right outside the fighting type Team Starbase, the final event of this shiny Nuzlocke. Before we got comfy hunting here, the first thing we had to do was leave the forest. Why, you may ask? Well, we need to get a bite to eat. Inside Levincia is a shop called Jade Palace Garden. They sell a variety of meals, but the one I'm looking forward to eating is the Mapo Tofu. Though it is rather spicy for myself and the team, it gives us encounter power level 1 for fire types. Back in episode 1, I made a rule regarding sandwich crafting to help against my shiny hunts. The goal behind this was to limit which Pokemon I could force to spawn around me while working to complete this shiny Nuzlocke. But I did implement a rule where I could eat at vendors and shops to get help for hunting. This meal I had at the Jade Palace Garden gave me a slight boost when hunting for fire types. With this combination of fire type encounters being raised while being in the bamboo forest, we can help spawn Growlithe and Arcanine. I decided my final shiny will be one of them, a pure fire type who was meant to be one of the legendaries in Gen 1, I think. It didn't take long before a few groups of Arcanine and Growlithe began to spawn. While it wasn't as much compared to having encounter power 3, it was way more when compared to their base spawn rate. Growlithe are considered a rare spawn in the world of Paldea, so I couldn't complain about the amount we were getting. I rode around in the night skies mentally preparing for the amount of phasing that could happen. The good news is that any of the Pokemon around me that could shine would be pretty noticeable. Oh my gosh. I found my final shiny. This Growlithe shined only 10 minutes deep into the hunt, and I couldn't believe it. I named this Growlithe Helios, a fitting name for my final shiny being a fire type. I gave my regards to the Arcanine who let me take his son for one of my last hurdles in my way. We trained a bit before heading up to the final Team Starbase. I took care of the grunt guarding the base and started knocking out the 30 Pokemon with Bubbles, Apollo, and Tamago. It didn't take long before Aerie showed up ready to defend the final base. She led with a Toxicroak, who Bubbles dealt with quickly. We switched to Apollo, who took on her Passimian. I accidentally clicked on Apollo's fighting type move, which almost cost Apollo to lose his second life. Oh my gosh. Thankfully, he held on with 5 HP while we swapped out to Medley, who took care of the Passimian. Next up was Annihilate, one of the strongest new Pokemon in this generation. So strong, in fact, that it cost Bubbles 1 life and brought a terastallized Tamago down to 1 HP. Luckily, Tamago held strong and took out the Annihilate. Ares' Team Starmobile was the toughest out of the 5. The longer he waited to take out the car, the more it increased its speed and attack. The Mobile powered up so much that it took out a life from both Medley and Tamago. We swapped out to Yordi, who also lost his second life in order to bring back Bubbles. Bubbles delivered the final blow, but who was the real winner here? Let's go. Oh my gosh. Well, dang. That was tough. This battle caused 4 Pokemon on my team to lose one of their lives. Not the best morale to have heading into the Pokemon League, but it could have been worse. I evolved Helios into Arcanine before we made our way to challenge the Pokemon League. On our way to the Pokemon League, I made a few pit stops at some outbreaks to get our team trained up a little more. I spent over an hour planning who we would use and the tactics we would try. We have 18 members who I can pick from, and even though they each had their own part in this story, I can only go in with 6. I decided to have Banana, Yordi, Helios, Yoshi, Bubbles, and Kanao on my team. I had many ideas of how to take down the Elite Four, and this team is best fit for the job. I arrived at the door of the Pokemon League. All 8 of my badges were checked, and I entered the building to my toughest challenge yet, an interview. What school are you in? Oh, that's easy. What school are you in? Oh, that's easy. I passed through the test first try with no problems at all and was then able to take on the Elite Four. Up first was Rika, who specialized in ground-type Pokemon. The plan for this fight was to really lean on Yordi and Bubbles to deal super effective moves. Rika led with a Whiscash that immediately had its fins hit with a Leech Seed. Yordi avoided a Blizzard and dealt a very strong Horn Leech that took him out. I swapped out to Bubbles to deal with Rika's Camerupt. I was able to get out a Rain Dance, but unfortunately fell asleep to a Yawn after dealing a one-hit Surf to Camerupt. Yordi came back out and took care of the Doug trio. Next up was Dawnfan. Bubbles took a few hits before waking up and setting up another Rain Dance. I healed up and got a few more Surfs in to take care of the Dawnfan. Rika's final Pokemon was Clodsire. The Clodsire terastallized into a ground type, which gave Yordi the upper hand with some super effective Horn Leeches. After a few minutes, the Clodsire lost and we were through the first Elite Four member. Next up was Poppy. Despite her small size, she was extremely tough. She prioritized in Steel-type Pokemon, and I didn't have too many Pokemon who could deal big damage against that. Yoshi was part ground, but a lot of Poppy's Pokemon had Fairy-type moves to counter Yoshi's Dragon Half. Something Yoshi had that these other Pokemon didn't was speed. I led with Yoshi, who took care of the first Copperajah in one hit. Next up was Corviknight. I sent Bubbles out, who didn't have too many effective moves, so I tried to get a Rain Dance out early on. While it cost me a bit of health, the Surf dealt enough damage, which caused the Corviknight to faint. Poppy then sent out Magnezone. The best option for this Pokemon was our newest friend, Helios. Helios had high attack, so I did the strongest fire moves I had to take care of the Magnezone, but it cost me a large chunk of health. Poppy then sent out a Bronzong who had to take on Yoshi. One small problem though, I forgot Bronzong had Levitate. Yoshi knew Crunch, which was strong enough to take out the Bronzong in a few hits. This left Yoshi with too low of HP to take on Poppy's final Pokemon, Tinkaton, a dual Fairy and Steel type that dealt massive damage. I had originally planned to outspeed the Tinkaton with Yoshi, but I couldn't risk it right now. I instead swapped to Yordi. My plan was to use Leech Seed and then Horn Leech myself to victory despite the strong Steel type wall we had in our way. This was the first real loss on the team. Yordi had lost all 3 lives at this point and could not continue in the rest of the Elite Four and Nuzlocke. I thought I could rely on the HP I would receive through the double forms of regeneration, but it wasn't enough. As sad as it was, Yordi dealt enough damage for Yoshi to come out and outspeed the Tinkaton, which let us past the second member of the Elite Four. Next up was Larry. Formerly known as the normal type gym leader in an older video, Larry was also the 3rd member of the Elite Four. Even though everyone loves Larry, we were not going to hold back. I'm so happy. I've always loved Frostlass, but I really love our Frostlass the most. Kanao was one of the newest members on our team, but brought honor to Yordi's passing by single-handedly knocking out 10 Pokemon in a row with only getting hit one time. Kanao has the Snowcloak ability. This boosts her evasiveness in a snowstorm. With this ability and speed of the Pokemon, I was able to start each fight with a snowstorm, use Aurora Veil when needed, and Ice Beam my way to victory. Canal also learned Blizzard during these fights, which dealt even more damage than Ice Beam. Oh, and it has 100% accuracy in a snowstorm. I was very proud and relieved to have made it through all of the Elite Four, but next up was the champion and we were down one Pokemon. I met up on the roof of the Pokemon League to champion Gita, who was ready to fight. She led with her Psychic-type Pokemon, Espathra. I sent out Canal to set up a snowstorm and Aurora Veil, but not for Blizzard. I wanted my evasion to be boosted, but only so I could lean in Canal's Ghost typing to deal extra damage on the Espathra. I avoided a big hit from the bird and took out the Espathra. Next up was King Gambit. I swapped to Yoshi, who used a few Earthquakes to take down the tanky Samurai. The next Pokemon on the Champions team was Veluza, a very fast water and psychic type fish. I decided to use Banana, who knew Glare. This was a 100% accurate move that paralyzed the enemy, which really slowed it down. I then spammed Coil to raise my attack and defense very high to a point where I one-shot the Veluza when I had the chance. Up next was Avalugg. I swapped to our Fire-type Helios, who charged head-on with 2 Flare Blitzes. The second to last Pokemon was a Go-Goat, who was trapped to the same torture from Banana. A Glare and Coil combination made the Dunsparce strong enough to take down the Goat. The final Pokemon on Gita's team was Glamora. This was a dual rock and poison type that terastallized into a rock type. This was perfect for Bubbles to go up against, who also terastallized into a water type. It only took a few powered up Surfs to deal the final blow on Champion Gita. I did it! Oh my gosh. It was for you, Yordi. We friggin' did it. I did it. I beat my first Pokemon Nuzlocke. Wait. Well, it seems we're not finished yet. Nemoto wanted to have one final battle, champion versus champion. I arrived at the bottom of the stairs right before the entrance of our shared school. Everyone gathered around to watch us have one last battle, and I beat her too. Alright, now I beat my first Pokemon Nuzlocke. Well, there you have it. This was my first Nuzlocke, and the idea to make it a Shiny Badge Quest 2 was a lot of fun. This series had a lot of highs and a lot of lows, but at the end of it all, I'm really glad that this journey happened. I know this sounds cheesy, but there were many times in the last couple of months where I debated stopping, but because of the support from all of you watching, I kept going. This is one of the largest projects I've ever attempted to do in my years of content creation, and I'm glad to have a community that had my back during the whole time. All of the comments, likes, and shares really gave me motivation to keep going, so I really want to say thank you. Thank you for the patience while I edited these. Thank you for commenting and liking, and most importantly, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.